I mean, he had Tom bloodied up, and Tom didn't want to continue in the fight.
Look, I might look like an idiot. Sometimes I might even talk like an idiot, but when it comes to fighting, I know what I'm talking about.
So here's what went down. After months of serious tension over matchmaking calls and how the UFC has been handling his career, Tom Aspinall has quietly started making strategic moves toward the PFL behind closed doors. And listen, what he just pulled might actually prove everything we've been thinking for weeks now. This situation is absolutely explosive, and we need to break down every piece because this story goes way deeper than anyone realizes. Let's get into it.
Well, listen, I didn't continue. I'll tell you why I didn't continue. Because I'm not a dummy. Like, I'm not going to go out there and fight one of the best strikers in the world if I can't see.
With double vision.
With any eye. Look.
I mean, he had Tom bleeding pretty bad, and Tom basically said he couldn't keep going in that fight. Now, before we really dig into this completely insane rabbit hole of backstage politics, before we unpack all these layers of drama, betrayal, and building anger that brought us to this game-changing moment in heavyweight boxing, we've got to go back to where this whole mess actually started. And I'm talking about the real beginning of this entire situation.
What's been going on in your exciting life for the last 5 weeks?
Oh, mate, I've been having a lovely time just in and out of hospital, getting all kinds of different tests done on my eyes and speaking to specialists, speaking to surgeons, speaking to doctors. Oh, it's been a fantastic time.
Let's break down what really happened on October 25th, 2025. Inside the Etihad Arena in Abu Dhabi, at what was supposed to be the night that proved Tom Aspinall was one of the most dominant heavyweight champions the UFC had ever seen in its entire existence. UFC 3 T1 was promoted as this incredible style matchup, right? You had Tom Aspinall's explosive wrestling and absolutely crushing ground control going against the elite striking and brilliant movement of Serial Game. This was Aspinall's first shot at defending his undisputed heavyweight championship, a title he had spent his entire professional life chasing through the ranks for years, and the pressure couldn't have been more intense for both fighters, stepping into that octagon under those bright lights.
I was very disappointed. Yeah, very disappointed.
If he would have come up and said, poked in the eye, illegal, couldn't see, couldn't continue, serious injury, etc., people would have laid off. They would have taken cues from him.
It definitely didn't help the cause. Definitely didn't.
The fight kicked off exactly how most experts and analysts thought it would play out. Those opening exchanges were back and forth and thrilling, with Gain connecting clean shots that actually got Aspinall's nose bleeding pretty heavily, while Aspinall kept pushing forward with his classic takedown pressure, trying to bring the French striker into those deep, treacherous grappling exchanges where he absolutely knew he could take over and control everything. The atmosphere inside that arena was completely electric, with everyone on their feet, knowing deep down they were watching a fight that could legitimately shift in any direction at any second. But then, at exactly 4 minutes and 35 seconds into that opening round, something went down that would alter the path of Tom Aspinall's entire career forever. And I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that.
I've spoken to the UFC since, but I've not spoken to... Me and Danny don't really speak like that anyway, so...
During some close-range striking where both guys were throwing heat, Gain's outstretched fingers caught Aspinall in both eyes at the same time. An accidental but completely devastating rule violation under UFC guidelines and regulations. Aspinall instantly showed the referee he was hurt, grabbing his face and telling referee Jason Herzog directly that he couldn't see anything at all, like his vision was totally gone. What went down next absolutely sent shockwaves through the entire mixed martial arts world everywhere.
Has he sent you a text or DM in the aftermath? Hope you're feeling better.
No, nothing like that. Nothing like that. He actually, like I said, he started giving updates that there was nothing wrong with my eye when that isn't the case.
After stopping for medical evaluation by the cage-side doctor, the referee called the fight a no contest, since Aspinall was determined unable to safely continue the bout due to how bad the eye damage was. And right there, ladies and gentlemen, what should have been Tom Aspinall's defining moment. His night of triumph became one of the most debated incidents in recent UFC heavyweight division history.
So you're not too happy then on what the president of the organisation is saying towards it?
Well, what do you think?
Tom didn't want to continue in the fight, so...
Look, we all know who is at fault here. What the
are you talking about, huh?
And off the back of that, Tom, what have the UFC said?
Hunter Campbell, who I deal with personally, he's just said if they can help out in any way with doctors and stuff like that, that's what they'll do.
Now you're probably thinking, all right, it was an accident. This stuff happens in fighting all the time. Why is this such a huge deal? Well, let me break down exactly why this is such a massive deal. Because the aftermath from this one moment has been absolutely devastating for everyone involved. Right after the fight ended, as everything was settling down, Aspinall got hammered with criticism from huge portions of the MMA fan base online and in all the media coverage.
And obviously you've been a massive help to the UFC. You've taken a fight on 2 weeks' notice. You've taken a fight in the middle of the night, been backup fighter for Jones versus Miocic, and then obviously the whole John Jones saga. How do you sort of see this going forward for yourself with the UFC?
I think right now we just got to focus on the health, innit? We just got to get everything back to normal, follow the doctor's orders, and that's all I can control right now. So we'll cross that bridge when I'm feeling better and everything's right.
Social media completely exploded with people saying he faked how bad the injury was, that he didn't have the real fighting heart to battle through the difficulty, even though other fighters have dealt with similar situations and kept going. The backlash was non-stop. It was vicious, and it got really personal, going after his character and his courage. But here's where everything took a twist that nobody expected. Here's where the real chaos started unfolding in ways that would stun the entire combat sports universe. Because it wasn't just random internet trolls who were doubting Tom Aspinall's choice to stop fighting and accept the no contest.
Well, look, if you were sidelined from doing your job for like 15 months, not allowed to do anything, you train your off for 6 months for a fight, then to get double eye pokes, be left with no vision for nearly 6 weeks, because of an illegal move. How do you think I feel? Not feeling fantastic, am I?
It was the president of the Ultimate Fighting Championship himself, Dana White, the most influential person in mixed martial arts. Those specific words, ladies and gentlemen, those exact words from Dana White himself during that press conference. Tom didn't want it to continue. Not Tom couldn't continue. Not Tom was medically prevented from continuing due to serious damage. Dana White actively fed into this negative story during the post-fight press conference, saying only Tom knows what happened and heavily suggesting through his delivery and phrasing that the choice to quit might show Aspinall's reluctance to fight rather than actual medical emergency.
A big shout out to everyone who has stuck there by me. A lot of haters out there who are living some very sad lives, who think they're eye doctors and have never... Listen, I'll double eye poke you full blast in the eyes and see if you can still write some grim comment on Instagram or YouTube or whatever. You let me know, you tough guys out there.
Aspinall, he went further in follow-up interviews over the next several days, basically saying that as far as they could tell from cage side, he doesn't have a detached retina. There's no major injury to the eye based on what he claimed were initial cage side evaluations from the doctor. These statements from the most powerful person in mixed martial arts, the guy who runs everything in the UFC, absolutely threw fuel on an already massive fire of drama. Some fans started calling Aspinall a quitter straight up, or saying he smartly used the foul as a way out, because Gane had built early momentum in the fight, and things weren't looking good for him. The story was getting written in real time across social media and MMA discussion boards, and it definitely wasn't getting written in Tom Aspinall's favor at all. But what nobody realized at the time, what the entire world was going to find out in the weeks ahead, when the medical documentation came out, was that Tom Aspinall's damage was way, way more serious than anyone, including Dana White, had publicly admitted to the media and fans. And when the facts finally emerged with real medical proof, it would reveal a huge gap between the UFC's heavyweight champion and the organization that might never get fixed, regardless of what happens moving forward. The drama mostly died down in the weeks after the event, as focus naturally moved to other UFC shows and news stories. But then, around November, Aspinall ended his silence with detailed medical reports and public interviews that would prove absolutely everything he had claimed from day one about how severe his injury really was. The medical paperwork shared across social media and interviews showed bilateral eye trauma from the eye poke, including major orbital soft tissue swelling, A small fracture of the right medial orbital wall and ongoing double vision that wouldn't resolve, no matter what treatments he attempted. But that wasn't even the most serious part of the diagnosis, believe it or not. Aspinall was diagnosed with Brown syndrome, an uncommon movement disorder where the superior oblique tendon sheath blocks upward eye movement, possibly caused by inflammation or direct trauma to the eye region. This isn't some minor annoyance that you can just power through, ladies and gentlemen. This is a legitimate medical issue that could potentially need surgical procedures on both of his eyes if conservative treatments don't fix the problem over time. That medical documentation right there shows you everything you need to understand about why Tom Aspinall made the tough choice he made in that situation. He wasn't being weak in any way. He wasn't giving up because the fight was getting tough or because he was losing rounds. He was protecting his future health and his entire career from lasting damage caused by an illegal strike that he had no control over. And yet, despite all of this comprehensive medical proof from real specialists, despite the diagnosis from actual eye doctors who understand what they're dealing with, the harm to his reputation and his connection with UFC management had already happened and couldn't be reversed. You can feel the anger and pain coming through every single word he says in interviews. 5 straight weeks of hospital appointments, multiple specialist meetings, and extensive medical testing, all while internet critics called him a quitter and questioned his heart and determination as a fighter. This is the brutal reality that Tom Aspinall has been dealing with every single day since UFC 31, and it's brought him closer and closer to his breaking point. With the organization he once spent his entire career dedicated to building up and representing with honor. Now that you see the complete picture, now that you understand the medical reality of what he was going through, while the entire internet was calling him a coward and a quitter, we need to discuss what happened afterward following UFC, because it shows a troubling pattern of actions from UFC leadership that has driven their heavyweight champion to his absolute limit. When Tom Aspinall sat down for his first big interview since the fight on the Ariel Hawaii show, which is one of the most important platforms in MMA media, he didn't hold back his real thoughts. He didn't try to soften his feelings or attempt to play politics. He put absolutely everything on display for the entire world to hear and decide for themselves, and what he shared about his connection, or total absence of one, with Dana White was completely shocking to hear from the current heavyweight champion. Let that reality hit you for a moment. If Dana White had just stepped up immediately and backed his heavyweight champion publicly, if he had simply recognized how serious the injury was, based on real medical information, and supported Aspinall's choice to protect his health and vision, the entire story would have changed dramatically in Aspinall's favor. The fans would have followed the boss's lead, like they always do. But instead, Dana went a totally different route, one that left his champion hanging out there alone, facing all the heat by himself. The UFC heavyweight champion of the world, the guy who holds the most important title in the most significant division of the most powerful mixed martial arts organization on the entire planet, has never built a real connection with the president of that organization beyond quick hellos and brief moments. He's never had a substantial conversation beyond casual greetings here and there at events, and after taking a career-threatening injury in the main event of a major pay-per-view show, Dana White didn't call to check on him. He didn't send a message. He didn't even reach out on social media to see how he was doing or show support. He expressed serious anger over the total absence of direct contact from White, pointing out that while UFC executive Hunter Campbell provided help for medical needs and treatments, White gave public statements to the media claiming no major damage to the eye without ever talking to him directly or asking how he was really feeling. This is the same guy who accepted fights on 2 weeks' notice to help the promotion. This is the same guy who served as backup fighter for Jones versus Miocic, sitting cage-side ready to jump in. This is the same guy who waited on the sidelines for 15 straight months, staying patient for a title opportunity while the UFC focused on other matchups that brought them more revenue. And this is how he's getting treated by the organization he gave up so much for throughout his career. But the problems go even deeper than just the eye poke situation and everything that followed. You see, Tom Aspinall's anger with the UFC has been growing for years at this point, not just weeks or months. This journey to the title included an interim belt victory back in 2023, followed by unification after John Jones's retirement in June, but the extended breaks he's been forced to take, often 12 to 14 months between fights, have created ongoing arguments about his activity level and the UFC's real dedication to building him as a genuine star attraction who could pull massive audiences. And here's where things get really fascinating. Here's where we start to see the money factors that might be pushing Tom Aspinall towards the exit and away from the UFC permanently. In October 2025, Andy Aspinall, Tom's father and longtime coach, publicly recommended against signing any new UFC deal, highlighting the opportunity for much higher paydays in professional boxing. This wasn't some throwaway comment made casually during a random interview nobody would notice. This was a planned statement meant to send a direct message to the UFC executives about the Aspinall team's plans going forward. Boxing for sure. More money, why not? Andy Aspinall told RMC Sport Combat Direct, "He's got 3 more fights on his deal now, and I don't want him to sign a new deal. If you get into the top level of that sport, the UFC don't pay anywhere close to what boxing does, and the example that everyone in the MMA world keeps referencing is Francis Ngannou's path after leaving. Remember, Ngannou's final UFC fight paid him roughly $7 total, but his boxing debut against Tyson Fury earned him around 10,000. That's not a small difference. Ladies and gentlemen, that's an entirely different world of money potential that the UFC simply can't compete with under their current business structure." Tom Aspinall himself has repeated this prizefighter approach in his own interviews, saying clearly, "You have to fight for the biggest money possible. We are risking our health and safety on the line." Never say never about any opportunity, but the money issues aren't the only thing driving Aspinall away from the UFC organization. There's also the important issue of his close friendship with Ante Delija, the former PFL heavyweight champion who joined the UFC in June, and this friendship has led to one of the most strange situations in recent UFC history that has Dana White absolutely heated behind the scenes. Aspinall has publicly stated that he would actually give up his UFC heavyweight title rather than face Delija in a championship fight, which is completely unprecedented. On the Shaken TSN Gigs podcast in October 2025, Aspinall explained his position clearly and without doubt, "If I'd never won a title, we would have to fight, because that's my dream. But now I've achieved it, I'd be like, all right, give it up, and he can have his moment. I wouldn't fight him. That's my guy." Dana White's response to this comment was typically direct and dismissive of Aspinall's emotions. "I hate that. Do you even think about giving it up because you don't want to compete against somebody is absolutely crazy." Do you notice the pattern developing here? Do you see how every single conversation between Tom Aspinall and UFC leadership seems to build more conflict, more problems, more reasons for the heavyweight champion to consider other options for his future? The relationship is falling apart right in front of us. When Dana White finally spoke about the growing problems at the UFC 3023 press conference on December 7, 2025, he tried to take back some of his earlier controversial statements, blaming the situation on a misunderstanding and insisting, "Never once did I say anything negative about him or in a disrespectful way." He explained that his earlier comments were based on initial information from cage side and confirmed the UFC's active participation in Aspinall's medical treatment. But for Tom Aspinall, the harm may already be permanent and can't be fixed. The trust has been shattered beyond repair. The relationship, if it ever really existed in the first place, has been permanently damaged by weeks of public attacks and private abandonment. And now, with just 2 to 3 fights left on his UFC deal, the heavyweight champion of the world is seriously considering all of his future possibilities. Now we reach the most shocking part of this entire saga. Now we need to discuss what's really going on behind closed doors and why the title of this video isn't clickbait or hype. It's the actual situation that Tom Aspinall is dealing with as we speak right now. While Tom Aspinall stays the UFC heavyweight champion as of December 9th, 2025, with no official departure announced to the public or media, the signs are everywhere for anyone watching closely enough and connecting the dots. The question isn't if Tom Aspinall will leave the UFC anymore. The question is when and where he'll land next. Aspinall's tie to the Professional Fighters League comes mainly through his deep friendship and training relationship with Ante Delija. The 2022 PFL heavyweight champion Delija won the PFL heavyweight tournament with TKO wins over Mateus Scheffel and Renan Ferreira, plus a decision over Shelton Graves, earning the $1 million prize as the first Croatian PFL champion in the organization's history. Their connection comes from years as training partners at Aspinall BJJ in the UK, where they've helped each other become elite fighters. Think about everything we've covered. Think about the destroyed relationship with Dana White. Think about the huge financial opportunities of boxing. Think about the fact that Aspinall has clearly said he would refuse to fight Delizia even if it meant giving up his title. Delizia himself has said the same thing publicly, stating he would also refuse to fight Aspinall for the belt, showing the mutual respect and brotherhood between these two fighters that goes beyond professional competition. This kind of loyalty, this kind of real friendship is uncommon in professional sports. And it's obviously something that means everything to Tom Aspinall personally. Notice how strategically Aspinall picked his words in that moment. He didn't say he was locked into the UFC long term. He didn't show enthusiasm about upcoming fights in the organization or talk about defending the belt many times. He just said they need to focus on his health and handle that situation when he's feeling better. That's not the talk of a champion who's completely invested in his promotion's future. That's the talk of someone keeping all his doors open. The bigger picture of this situation brings up questions about fighter independence, division politics, and the balance between personal relationships and professional duties in MMA. Delizia's ranking and Aspinall's championship position mean a fight could theoretically happen if both keep winning fights, but Aspinall has made it crystal clear that he will never allow that fight to happen under any conditions whatsoever. So where does this leave us? What's the most realistic path forward for Tom Aspinall's career? Industry insiders are predicting that Aspinall may leave the UFC after his current deal ends to chase boxing, where the money potential is exponentially better than anything the UFC can realistically provide him. His father has been openly pushing for this direction for months now, and Aspinall himself has done nothing to stop the rumors or promise the UFC's future plans. But there's another option that nobody is discussing openly yet, and that's where the PFL enters the picture as a potential destination. You see, the PFL has been aggressively recruiting former UFC champions and big-name fighters, trying to establish themselves as a real alternative to the UFC's control in the marketplace. And with Aspinall's strong connections to Delizia, with his anger towards UFC management reaching its peak, and with his goal to maximize his income during the best years of his career, a jump to the PFL isn't as crazy as it might first appear to casual fans. Consider this crucial factor. Tom Aspinall is 32 years old, which means he has a narrow window to take advantage of his physical peak as a professional fighter. Every month he wastes dealing with injuries, contract fights, and promotional nonsense is a month he's not earning the money he deserves for risking his body and his health inside that cage. That anger, that letdown, that feeling of being abandoned by the organization he sacrificed so much for, it's completely obvious in every word he says. You can hear it in his tone. You can see it in his attitude during every interview. This isn't a satisfied champion enjoying his success at the peak of the sport. This is a man who feels disrespected, underappreciated, and ready to check out his alternatives somewhere else. As of right now, Aspinall's career future is unclear, but not over. He has time to heal from his eye injury, and Dana White's statements suggest he still has special treatment as champion within the organization. A rematch with Gane is probably scheduled for early 2026, potentially headlining a UK event given Aspinall's huge popularity in his home country. But don't mistake what's really happening here. The countdown is running on Tom Aspinall's UFC time, with only 2 to 3 fights left on his deal, and with every sign that his team has zero intention of re-signing with the promotion. We are witnessing the final act of Tom Aspinall's UFC career happening in real time, right in front of us. Whether he winds up in boxing, earning tens of millions of dollars per fight in the PFL, reconnecting with his close friend Delizia, or in some other opportunity entirely that we haven't even thought of yet, one thing is absolutely certain. Tom Aspinall is finished being disrespected by the organization he gave everything to. He's finished being undervalued while risking his health on the line. He's finished being called a quitter by people who have never set foot inside an octagon or taken a punch in their entire lives. And he's finished letting Dana White control the story of his career and his legacy. If you enjoyed this breakdown, then go ahead and check out the other content on your screen for more explosive MMA coverage.